Hi, and welcome to part two of my influences video. In my first part, I talked about my main five like influences to my writing and stuff, which were like R.L. Stein, H.P. Lovecraft, George Lucas, J.R.R. Tolkien, and Peter Jackson. Along with that, and Josh Whedon. They were the ones I spoke about last time. Just want to go into a bit more detail about like some of my other major influences. There were maybe yeah, like movies. Massive. I mentioned movies before being a massive influence. Star Wars movies and Lord of the Rings got me into like sci-fi and fantasy sort of stuff because Lord of the Rings movies they came out just as I was getting like just hitting my teen years when they started coming out. So I basically grew up throughout my teen years with them and reading the books and stuff. Um, Willow was also another movie, early like on fantasy movie, also made by George Lucas. They really helped me get into like the fantasy thing and stuff. And I guess even like the sci like my early introductions to sci-fi, apart from Star Wars, were like the cyberpunk movies, like Blade Runner. The Fifth Element was one that was really cool. The Matrix movies, I really loved them. Um, they kind of like got me like thinking about like whole sci-fi stuff and that sort of thing, and like incorporate parts of that into my writing, especially Blade Runner, like cyberpunk stuff, and that's something I really got into, which I'll talk more about later. And Sin City was another movie that inspired my second novel. I actually started writing the cyberpunk one, Dodging Bullets, an anthology. After seeing that movie, really inspired me like that to write sort of like a cyberpunk sort of version of that was like set like centuries in the future, where it's like a number of different stories that are all interconnected within the same time and place. And because the whole thing is when I'm talking about this video, talking about influences and stuff, I could really do like I could go really really in depth because like different stories are inspired by different things. So I'm trying to stick to more of a general sort of guideline, as it were, because I could be here forever otherwise. And apart from actually movie movies themselves, actually like directors who like their method of storytelling and that I've like really caught on and tried to incorporate into my writing in some way because it's like things like Stephen King. I watched a thing a while ago in an interview where he said, he was the first of like first of the generation of writers who grew up with that like imagery stimulus sort of thing, and it's really how it's really like adapted and changed and affected like creative writing and stuff. In that we were watching movies and TV and stuff, and TV shows before we learned to read these days. So that has it's a lot more influential. On our writing styles and everything. So yeah, the directors probably Tarantino is definitely one of them. Just how he's how his stuff is like his movies are very violent but fun sort of thing. Like I used to be old school action movies sort of stuff, and that I guess can go along with that. And Mel Gibson in turn with that, and his like love of like historical epics and like he's basically like mastery of like story structure and stuff. And I really love how Tarantino writes scripts for his movies as like to a soundtrack. He'll have like a specific song in mind as he's writing the script for it and that. And that's just something I've kind of done myself, like helping the music to help motivate me and inspire me while I'm writing and stuff. But I'll get to that a bit more later. Um, so I mentioned Mel Gibson, his historical epics. Akira Kurosawa, fantastic Japanese director. Yeah, it's again the same sort of thing with his movies like that. The big historical epics that are character driven sort of thing. Spielberg, of course, was like he's one of the masters of cinema, modern cinema. Um, Werner Herzog, probably one of the biggest names in European cinema, along with Dario Argento, and just his use of lighting and ability to create atmosphere and imagery and that sort of stuff. Something that I've really taken on board in the last few years. And as a kid, one of my school teachers, he showed us a lot of like old school like movies from like the 50s and 60s, a lot of like the swashbuckling, Knights in Shining Armor sort of movies, stuff like that, like Prince Valiant, Knights of the Round Table, Robin Hood, The Three Musketeers, Ivanhoe was another one of them. All those sort of movies really got me into like history and stuff as well, and that's something else I'll talk about a bit more later. That's like really inspired me. Um, so yeah, music wise, music in general helps inspire me while I'm writing. and it depends really on the story I'm writing as to what sort of music I'll be listening to at the time. Like when I was writing my cyberpunk novel, I listened to a lot of like agrotech, trance, and industrial sort of music. Everything from like Suicide Commando to like random trance playlists on YouTube and stuff like Ministry, Marilyn Manson, Rob Zombie sort of thing, and some of Alice Cooper's industrial stuff he did for a bit there. Also another band like The Covenant, some of the more industrial black metal sort of acts like that, and Cycle 9, Dark Space. Yeah, so that's basically a rough idea. Depending upon what I'm writing, depends what I'm listening to, and I find that in general just really helps. So I listen to a lot of metal music and stuff, and a lot of the themes and lyrics and that and have found to be quite like inspiring and stuff. Like especially with like bands like Iron Maiden and Halloween. Just not the way it's written, but the way it's like composed and that as well. I find really quite inspiring. It really helps. It really helps me, I guess, in a way to actually go with like actual like structure and flow of things. Um, yeah, because I do have a few stories based on some songs. I've got a story in mind based on the Cannibal Corpse Priest of Sodom, and another song inspired by Cannibal Corpse in general. A couple actually, both relating around cannibalism. But yeah, so I've always wanted to, for a while, I've wanted to write a story, basically like essentially the same sort of story as the Black Sabbath song Nib, which I've always thought was a really cool story, like lyrically wise as well as musically. So that's something I've always wanted to write. I've been getting around to. And another story I have is basically really heavily inspired by the Sabbath song Planet Caravan, which if you actually read the story, if I told you, you wouldn't see the similarities in that, but if you actually read it, you'd really see how it's about space exploration and that, they were searching for a space sort of thing. Um, yeah, not a whole lot. It's just when I was writing my first novel, Devil's Eye, when I was writing that, I listened to a lot of piratey sort of music, especially the pirate metal bands Running Wild and Ailstorm. I listened to them quite a lot. That's just like another example, that sort of thing. Um, TV series. I actually think about it, I could actually think of a lot of examples of how TV series have influenced my writing. I'm a massive fan of the Buffy and Angel TV series and like that whole Buffyverse thing from Josh Whedon. Um, that's really inspired me in a way because I talked about that before, so I'm really going to go back into it again. But yeah, them probably the original series of the Twilight Zone has been quite inspirational with and motivating in how their stories are structured, everything with a little like the twists and stuff on the end, and notice like a lot of really cool, really unique sort of stories, which kind of leads me into literature. Like I love a lot of the old school like pulp magazines, like amazing stories, weird tales, um, sort of stuff like that, along with like your poetry epics like Paradise Lost and Homer's The Iliad and the Odyssey. Although although I enjoyed the Odyssey, I don't think it was half as good as the Iliad. But they've been a big influence as well, along with the Marquis de Sade. I found like his work to me has been like influential and inspiring to the like sort of the aspect like to think outside the box sort of thing, not necessarily writing his type of stuff. But yeah, just try to be original, think outside the box, and don't be afraid to like push the limits, sort of thing. What's acceptable? um, Dean Koontz is another writer who I'm really quite influenced by. I just love how he manages like to blend elements of like sci-fi, supernatural, suspense, horror, and action sort of stuff all into one, and like gets this whole like really unique feel and everything out of it. I really, just a personal preference sort of thing, even though he's a great writer, I really prefer Dean Koontz and stuff over Stephen King. So I find King's his stuff is very character driven, which is fine, but it tends to drag on quite a lot, while Koontz's sort of stuff is very action and plot orientated. So his stuff tends to move a lot faster, and it's a lot more interesting and exciting and easier for me to get into. So that's why I'm going to mention him as an influence as opposed to Stephen King. Um, Star Wars novels, I read a lot of them growing up, especially the New Jedi Order was one that was really big for me. I love a lot of the writers from that series and just the Star Wars books in general. Like Aaron Olson, the great writer, who has this great blend of like action comedy things. It's like does like the action comedy very well, and like buddy cop sort of thing as that. But it's like yeah, transferred over into writing as opposed to film and like the whole sci-fi setting of Star Wars. It's something that's quite fond of. Also like Troy Denning, Timothy Zahn, who wrote a lot of the Thrawn stuff. Um, and the I think it was Michael Stackpole as well, who did with Aaron Alston. They did the X-Wing series, which is a great sci-fi, like military sort of series, which is really cool. I've got a few things that have been inspired in part by that, and Karen Travis, who did the Republic and Imperial Commando books, which I quite liked as well. Although I find her writing style to be kind of dry at times. But yeah. Um, Comic books, I mean, fairly decent influence as well. Like, I was really big into like the Spider-Man as a kid, especially the Spider-Man 2099 was one that really helping when I was just getting into cyberpunk sort of stuff. So they've both been pretty big influences along with Image Comics of the 90s. Because like while Marvel and DC were doing like a typical superhero, sort of stuff, the sort of like the G for general everyone sort of thing. Image were doing a lot more graphic and explicit, like more M-rated sort of stuff. It's like their comics had like gore in them. They had like nudity, extreme violence and coarse language and that, and a lot edgy. Like comics were a lot edgier and full on in general, aimed at an older audience. And as a kid, that's something I found quite enthralling. Where we got like Superman and like Spider-Man and Batman doing their good guy thing over here, while you've got guys in Image Comics torturing someone to get information out of them, which I always thought was really cool. Just the whole way their universe networks that as well. Um, Stuff from real life things as well. Like I've got a story based upon there was a news article I saw years ago online about they found like this abandoned cargo ship and it was like infested with like thousands and thousands and thousands of rats and it was just like drifting derelict at sea. But well, make a really cool setting for a cool horror story. So I took that. So that's one thing that's inspired me there. Along with that, that story was a few years ago now. They found this like family of inbred hillbillies that were living in the Blue Mountains, away from civilization. It's like almost something from like Wrong Turn, one of those horror movies with the freaky hillbilly cannibals sort of thing. So I've got a story in the works lined up about that. There's one example of those sort of things. It's like can be really good fiction fodder. Childhood places, places I went to the kids, around like Lennox Head Bar and Bay sort of area, like it's sort of little nice areas by the beach, by the sea sort of thing, but like when you're a kid and it's getting dark, you let your imagination get away. It can also be quite a atmospheric and creepy and almost a sinister sort of place in a way. I don't know, I was just thinking, I don't know if it was just my imagination or what, but yeah, I always found, especially in Byron Bay, the lighthouse there, to be really, really creepy, especially when it gets like dark of a night. Just the way, the light goes around the circle gives like this whole ghostly visage. And things going camping that as a kid, going out to, farms full time, living out in a rural area, and in sort of like almost like a rainforest sort of thing for a few years. It's given me a few ideas for a few different things. History as well. I'm a massive history buff. Being inspired by, especially when you're world building, inspired by real world like civilizations, cultures, and races is really, a really big thing. Especially I'm being a lot of like ancient civilizations like ancient Egypt, Rome, Greece, like Mesopotamia, the whole Middle Eastern area there, and a lot of the whole like Celtic and Gaelic tribes and everything. So them were really cool too, as well as like ancient like China and like feudal Japan. And obviously I mentioned pirates before. That's another one. Because yeah, my first whole novel was based around pirates. So yeah, I've actually got a few stories lined up about actual space pirates because I think it's really cool. Medium with a lot of potential, but you don't really see much space pirate stuff out there. So it's kind of like a whole wasted sort of potential there, which no one's really tapped into, which hopefully do. And lastly, yeah, anime has been a fairly big influence for me, especially like the way they kind of like mesh and meld different genres together. And when you hear something like a sci-fi, horror, fantasy, it's like, oh, that sounds like weird, you know, it sounds like that would work at all. But they somehow find a way to make it work, and it works really fucking well. And they have this great world building, this whole unique world, and everything they build all around their stories and stuff, which really adds to and boosts. And that's something I really tried to do with my own writing. I've really, really loved that. It's really caught on. Like some of my favorite animes, like Berserk, Cowboy Bebop, Claymore, Black Lagoon, and Full Metal Alchemist. I think some of my favorite ones there. But yeah, the Studio Ghibli movies, of course, are really good as well. But that's just, inspired me to like think outside the box. Don't be afraid to mix genres and mash things up to create something new, original, and fresh. Which is basically what I try to do in some regard with everything. Um, but yeah, I guess that's pretty much just about it. That's my influences into videos. Cheers.